How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope, this time for April 5th through April 11th of 2021. My name is Cam White. Thank you guys so much for being here. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. And before I jump straight into the horoscope, I just want to reiterate, podcast is coming out not this week, but I think next week. Maybe. I forgot what day. It's the 17th, 18th, I think. Sometime around then. Also coming out with the Patreon if you guys want to support the channel. I really appreciate that. I know a lot of people have been asking about that. That's going to be coming out here in the next 2 weeks. And also, now that we're in April, if you watch the monthly horoscope and go by week, let me know what you think of it as the weeks go on. I've been getting a lot of feedback on my monthly horoscopes. As a Leo, I hate being criticized, but I also appreciate all the feedback. Just learning what I could do differently. Anyway, let's get straight into the horoscope. I just wanted to make those announcements real quick. This week is really kind of weird. There's both like not a lot going on and also a lot going on at the same time. So, like last week was kind of simple for the most part. It was mostly just lunar transits. This is really kind of like a mixture of everything. So let's kind of, I guess, break it down. Oh, hey, this is on my other camera. Hold on. It's like Mercury's retrograde right now. I've been having so many random issues with tech. Anyway, we start off Monday. Now, Monday's interesting because the moon's going to be in Aquarius, right? But as it enters Aquarius, it's going to be applying to a square with Uranus the whole day and then eventually make a conjunction with Saturn. So on Monday, these moon and Aquarius transits are kind of funny. The moon being about, what we're reflecting, what we're wanting to, what we're, where our emotions are kind of drawn to. And in Aquarius, it's like, where do we stand? Not necessarily like what side am I on, but like Aquarius is about like what ideas need to be, stabilized, what ideas need to be consistent and fixated, right? And so as the moon's in Aquarius, it's like, okay, let's, keep this consistency. Like, how can I keep things going? But as the moon makes that square to Uranus first, there's this kind of like, not everything's going to go as planned. Just because there's a certain line of thinking that you like, that doesn't mean that it's always going to play out practically. And so on Monday with the moon squaring Uranus, expect something to kind of, unexpected to come up. That's not horrible, but it definitely is kind of like, okay, well, it's kind of like when someone is like, hey, you want to watch my dog for me for the weekend? And you're like, sure. And this dog just like chews up everything. You're like, fuck, okay. That's kind of how I would explain the moon squaring Uranus. But then after the moon squares Uranus, the moon is then going to conjoin Saturn. And so it goes from kind of like there's this unpredictability and this unexpectedness to it to going, okay, well, what do I have to take responsibility over now? Now with this unpredictability, it's kind of like when you're a kid and some kid in your classroom messes something up so the teacher just punishes everyone. It's like, well, this is why we can't have nice things. This is the transit I would explain as this is why we can't have nice things. And I think the moon conjoining Saturn just like, well, now we can't have fun with that. And we have to be more serious about this because, well, there's just too many unexpected. There's just too much unknown. There's just too much. That's what I like about Uranus and Taurus. In the sense of Uranus is like unpredictability. Like after an earthquake, like it's really kind of like difficult to tell where a building is at as far as like if it can hold or not. Same thing with like certain, ground, right? Uranus and Taurus is like you can't always really project what's going on underground. Sure, you could use like, echolocation and stuff like that, but like it's you never really know that's why we have like things like sinkholes and then like in California like the whole level of the ground's going down because we use all the water. But what I'm trying to get to with Uranus and Taurus is like the ground that we're on is unstable, which is kind of tricky because there's this uncertainty to it. There's this unknown. What's underneath the ground? We don't know. I think with Taurus, that's the flip side is Scorpio. It's like, oh, there's all these beautiful trees and plants growing on the ground, but underneath it, there's all of these, of course, throughout history, there's been this, philosophy of like the underworld and like hell and things like that. But anyway, I think as the moon makes that square with Uranus, you're going to feel some aftershocks. There's going to be some tremors. The moon conjoining Saturn is like, hey, we're still in earthquake territory. There's still earthquakes going on and aftershocks going on. Maybe we shouldn't be, trying to rebuild at the moment. Like, let's let things knock down a little bit more. But also on Monday, we have Venus sextiling Mars, which is interesting to say the least, because Venus is in Aries, right? Venus is, gimme, I'm going to go for this, I'm going to do that. Now, Venus in Aries is very like, usually it's, I think, a much more assertive, but because Venus is combust underneath the sun, it's like, we're not going to go after it unless we have that confidence. And the sun in Aries is like, you know what, like, we should be leaning more on the confidence. We should be leaning more on like the self-assertion. We should be leaning more on like the, vitality that we're given right now. Not so much the Venus energy of like, what are we like enjoying? But as Venus is in Aries sextiling its ruler Mars in Gemini, I think this is where Venus in Aries starts to feel a little bit more comfortable and is like, okay, I can have fun. I can play. What does this do? What does that do? It's like, if you guys ever seen those videos of like the people who are against like gun control, and then they like, I think like Vice does this or something, where it's like all of these people that are like against, or that like want gun control, and they give them guns to shoot, and then like there's people, of course, that are like, I don't like it, and then there's other people like, that was actually really fun. That's kind of like Venus sextiling Mars in Gemini, whereas there's this kind of like, oh, like, I am kind of into this. This is kind of fun. This is enjoyable. It's stimulating, right? By this point, Mercury is in Aries too, so a lot of things are clicking. That mental fog's going away by this point. Mars is in Gemini. We're kind of getting our hands in a lot of different areas, right? It's a little bit distracting, but Venus in Aries sextiling is like, hey, this is kind of fun, to iterate it, or at least to connect it with the moon squaring Uranus conjoining Saturn also on Monday. It's kind of like, dealing with the problem is fun when it's kind of like for example, like when it's a sport, right? Like when you're like, that's what makes like football really fun, because it's a big strategy game. And there's this kind of like, when you're watching a good game of football and you see like a good play going, you go, oh, they're going to re-strategize, they're going to do something else. And it's like, sure, it's an issue related thing, but it's all in the name of like competition, of like fun. And so I think Monday's got this weird mixture of like a headache, but also like, we're having a good time. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, we're all here having fun. What's that, like that Drake video I posted the other day when Neil deGrasse Tyson went off about astrology, and it's just like, we're just proud and passionate. That's all we are. Monday's looking good. Tuesday's kind of interesting. I like Tuesday a lot, honestly. The moon's going to be applying, so get this, the moon is going to first trine Mars, and then it is going to then sextile Venus, and then it will conjoin Jupiter. So it's like bing, bing, bing. As the moon trines, for one, as the moon is in Aquarius going up towards Jupiter, right? We're already kind of feeling that expansion of like, how much more can I take on? I'll explain that a little bit more in a second. But as the moon's in Aquarius being like, reflective of what ideas are we holding up, what ideas are we like basing our foundation in right now, and as the moon's trining Mars in Gemini, there's kind of like this, like this makes sense, like, this holds weight, if that makes sense. The moon trining Mars is like, with Mars and Gemini being like, this is the ideas that I'm fighting with. Mars and Gemini is using our words to fight too. Mars and Gemini is just being much more like, piercing with our tongue. I think the moon in Aquarius trining Mars and Gemini is like, it's kind of like that confidence that you get when you're like, when you tell a really witty joke, when you're quick at something. That's kind of like this is the kind of energy here. But I think as the moon trines Mars, then sextiles Venus, this is like, oh. So I think the idea here is, I think by the time you get to Tuesday, there's this kind of like, I don't even know how to explain it, because it's everything. It's, well, like, there's this video, too bad I didn't have this pulled up, but there was this fire in Arizona, and I think in like 2018, 2019, it was, of course, a gender reveal party. But it's really funny because the thing explodes, and then, I mean, within like seconds, like within like 3 seconds, I mean, everything's on fire. Like, it just happens so quickly. And I look at these kind of transits where it's like the moon conjoining Mars, then sextiling Venus, conjoining Jupiter. It's like, man, when you just get a little bit of, that's all you need, is a little bit of spark. And I think this Venus Sun thing is that kind of spark. And this is a windy day. And I think this is one of those days where that spark could lead to a little bit more of a fire than you might anticipate, which I don't think is bad. But I think, again, I want to reiterate something here. I made a tweet earlier today. I'm recording this on Friday about, if you want to get something constructive done, if you want to get something progressive done, this is the time to do it. Because when Mars moves into Cancer, it's not going to be that way. We're just going to be really focusing on the necessities. But I think last week, as you're watching this in the future, I think last week it was a much more difficult to get out of that funk because Mercury was still in Pisces. However, now that Mercury's in Aries and we're out of all of the funk, essentially, all of this fire and air, again, it's like the first fire during fire season. Like in California, like it's just like, it's kind of like the marker of the summer, I guess. But again, you only need really one little spark on a windy day to cause some damage. Not to say that this is going to cause damage. I think this is a good fire and air, right? The sun and Venus just conjoin each other. We're starting all these new things. The moon's going to trine Mars, where it's like, okay, I know how to take action on these ideas. It sextiles Venus. This is fun. I'm kind of enjoying going after what I want. And then the moon is going to apply it for Jupiter for the rest of the evening on Tuesday, where it's really going like, you know what? Maybe this can work. You know what? This is working for me. There's this abundance. There's this growth aspect. There's all of this room to play in, right? All of the horsepower and all of the room to gallop, if you know that reference. Let's get to Wednesday, though. Wednesday, the moon pretty much, it'll be conjoining Jupiter, separating from Jupiter, and then it'll go into Pisces, where once the moon conjoins Jupiter Tuesday evening, Tuesday night, it'll then go void. So pretty much nothing's going to happen. Then the moon will go into Pisces, where, it kind of takes a splash. I personally, my frustration with the moon in Pisces is like, I'm just a very got to get things done kind of person. And I struggle with moon in Pisces transits because it's like, you don't have that opportunity. But what's nice about the moon in Pisces transits is that it does give you a time to really reflect on things. The moon, the reflector, more highlighting the internal parts of ourselves, is in Jupiter's house. What's in Jupiter's house? Well, Jupiter has two houses. Jupiter has a Sagittarius house, which is like where all of his hiking gear is, and there's motorcycles and there's all this crazy shit from around the world, versus Pisces is like this tranquil meditation zone that's like, next to a waterfall, and there's like raked sand everywhere. And as the moon's in Pisces, the reason I'm bringing this up is like, sure, there's all this fire and air stuff, but like, okay, for example, I can only relate this to the way I know, but I'm sure everyone has this. Sometimes it's through music. For me, what I always thought was funny was when I used to ride motocross. When you're riding a dirt bike and you're on a track, you think that you're really focused on everything, but there's a lot of the times where you can be riding and doing a lot of intense stuff, but you're just focused on other stuff. Like there'd be times I'd be like riding and I'm just like thinking about like some random situation in my life that's just like has nothing to do with me in the moment on a motorcycle going really fast, jumping in this, air and everything. And this is one of those moments where, this could be music. I do the same thing when I drum. When I get in the zone, when you get in that, what's that, that trance? Is that, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for, I think. That trance state of mind, you can work through things. And the way I really look at Wednesday is that moon's going to be void jumping into Pisces. As you're in the zone, you're going to start thinking about some stuff. You're going to start pondering some things. I don't think it's bad, but I do. What gets interesting is, again, Wednesday, like the moon dips into Pisces and we just kind of think. Really, it's when we get into Thursday. Because Thursday, the moon's just going to be squaring the nodes. That's really it. The moon does not really do much else. And this is what I want to get to. As we're in this zone, right? Mars, Gemini, all of this fire stuff, all this air stuff, we're doing something. We're in the middle of something, but there's a part of us that's zoned out that's really reflective. That's that moon in Pisces. And what I think is interesting here is, the moon squares the fucking nodes like twice every month, right? So it's usually not a big deal. But again, like I said, spring is cool. Like when Venus goes into Taurus, and Taurus season is going to be cool. That's going to be nice. But Gemini season is absolutely wild. Gemini season, I think I said this in another horoscope in my last weekly, but I'm going to say it again. It is just like that scene off Mean Girls where everyone's yelling at each other, ripping each other's hair, there's paper flying everywhere. Like, that's what Gemini season looks like this year. And I swear to God, now that all of these, I look at this moon transit squaring the nodes as kind of playing into that. Same thing when the Mars is on the North Node. Like I said last week, that Mars North Node thing, that's going to come up really big in May and June, which that was when I think the Suez Canal blockage, that's just going to lead to a whole smorgasbord of a bunch of other geopolitical things, which I'm going to talk about in my podcast. Anyway, I look at the moon squaring the nodes here where, when you're able to get in that trance state of mind, for sometimes it's, for me also too, it was biking, especially like some people it's running. When you get in that trance state of mind, it's like, for me at least, it's one of the only ways I can actually mentally like work through something. Like I have to be busy. I absolutely, well, for one, I pick and choose whatever works for me in terms of spiritual tools. And the Bible this isn't even in the Bible. This is just a Christian saying. Or maybe it is in the Bible. I don't really know. But the devil's hands or the idle hands of the devil's workshop. I think that is one of the absolute truest things that has ever been said in humanity. When you are not doing anything, like it is so easy for things to creep up in your mind and you get all, conflated and confused. But when you're actively engaged in something, there's this sense of being able to work through things. It's like lubricating the gears in your mind. And I think as that's being lubricated with all this fire and air stuff, and that's not to say that some of this fire and air stuff isn't challenging some people, but it's definitely going to pressure you. But we're all in it, right? We're all doing the same activity. Some people are really having a fun time. Some people are struggling, but we're all engaged in it mentally, right? That's the idea of this fire air stuff. Like when fire is in front of you, it's like water. You can watch water come downstream. You can watch water come from the sky. You can watch water steam up. Earth doesn't come out of nowhere. You can see the air, but fire is very, like, it's there. It's in your face. So this moon squaring the nodes, though, is like, once we start reflecting on some things really start shifting in a sense. Because now we're also going towards this new moon in Aries that we're closing the week off with, which I think is good. But this moon squaring the nodes is where we kind of have this shift of going, our feelings change a little bit. Our feelings go from, I was feeling this way, and now that I kind of have given this perspective, I understand a little bit more of my path forward. So while I think Wednesday and Thursday are really boring for the most part, not to say that you won't be doing anything, it's just that while not a lot's going on, it's going to offer a lot of deeper reflection that I think is going to be good. But then we get into Friday. I need to take a drink of water for this. Friday looks really weird because while we're reflecting on everything on Thursday, on Friday Mars squares Neptune, but at the same time the moon's going to conjoin Neptune and square Mars. So this looks like every now and then, this was the funniest part about riding dirt bikes that a lot of people never you don't think about. Like you'll be on the track going, and when you're deep in thought and you're checked out, right? You're not paying attention. Something happens, you didn't even see it. It kind of snaps you and it kind of wakes you up. When you're riding dirt bikes, especially on a track, people will throw their bike in front of you and then rail on the gas and pretty much they're shooting dirt and rocks at your face and body 50, 60 miles an hour. No problem, because whether it's how fast they're shooting at you versus how fast you're riding into it, you get hit with rocks and dirt all the time, and it comes out of nowhere. And it hurts. It's not fun. It's and it's a wake up call too, because the sad part is you only see it coming right when it's in front of your face. Now, why I'm bringing this up is on Friday, as this moon conjoins Neptune, there's this kind of you're kind of tranced out, you're kind of spaced out, you're kind of whoa, this is a little, it's like when you stand up too fast and maybe you're iron deficient, so everything's a little bit blurry. Mars is also squaring Neptune, where it's hey, wake up. You're to continue my analogy, you're on a dirt bike. Like you got to pay attention to what's in front of you before you crash. What is that fucking, Talladega Nights. What does he say? If you don't, you might crash and burn, but if you don't take the turn, you ain't ever going to learn, or some corny shit like that. That's kind of like this Mars square Neptune thing. Mars is our action, our drive, our energy, right? Mars is in Gemini. We're stimulated. We're wanting to do here. We're trying to do this. We're trying to do that. As Mars squares Neptune, there's this kind of like, you ever do a lot of stuff and then realize you're like, none of this is meaningful. Why am I doing any of this at all? That's kind of like Mars square Neptune. I think there can be for some people, this can bring a lot of anxiety, because this can bring a lot of questioning things. Because Mars squaring Neptune too is like looking for your keys, knowing you put your keys right here, but they're not there. Mars squaring Neptune is like arguing with someone. They might say something and you argue against them, and then they're like, I didn't say that. And you're like, what? Like what? Or like they like, it's not when there's a few, like what I talked about a couple weeks, like bad days to not have to have a conversation. This isn't necessarily a bad day to have a conversation. This is a bad day to, I think, maybe pick a fight, or to think you might see something. Mars square Neptune, just expect to not know where you're going. Expect to feel very lost and confused. Expect to feel very checked out, and then kind of get smacked with a rock and go, oh shit, hey, I need to pay attention. Because like Mars square Neptune is very like, if you're not paying attention, if you're texting and driving, like don't be surprised if you hit something. You know what I mean? God forbid you hit a person. So I think that Mars square Neptune is just like, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Like, for real. Mars square Neptune is like, dude, texting and driving is all fun and games until you're dead. So, not to make it all serious, but Mars square Neptune is like, I think we're going to be kind of reflective on, getting really into it, but, kind of also getting checked out enough to where we're not really paying attention to what we need to pay attention to. So just wake up on Friday. The moon's also going to later go into Aries the next day. So let's actually talk about Saturday, and we get into the weekend. Now, this is where things change. Now, personally, I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier. When I talked about if you wanted to get things done and be progressive, this is the time to do it. For me personally, I've been trying to just get my ducks in a row. Mercury in Aries is going to help get in the mindset. But I'm personally waiting for this new moon in Aries for a few reasons. To really be like, this is where it's time to move forward with stuff and get the energy going. One, because as we start Saturday, the moon's going to go into Aries and then pretty much conjoin Mercury, while it also sextiles Saturn too. And Mercury's going to sextile Saturn. So on Saturday, there's this, when you check in after, again, we get so checked out and we start really contemplating things and we legitimately make a mental shift, then something happens that makes us go, oh, I need to wake up. But because we made that mental shift, because we had that moment to ourselves, it's like now it's like that mental blockage gets cleared out. It's like now it's easier for things to move forward. And that moon going into Aries, conjoining Mercury with Mercury sextiling Saturn, this is where things are clicking. This is finally okay, now I know where I need to target. Now I know where I need to, insert myself. Now I know where I need to apply and engage, right? The moon in Aries is like, this is what I'm going. This is what I'm direct about. Chiron's here too. So there's this kind of this is new. This is we're not used to being able to do this, and it also feels good, Chiron is it's sensitive, but it's healing doing all of this. And I think while Mercury is sextiling Saturn, it's when you're able to be clear, when you're able to be Mercury in Aries is when that clarity hits, I guess, when it's just when you're able to be blunt, when you know the words you need to use and you don't waste your time with any other words you don't need. And Mercury sextiling Saturn, right? You're getting the point across. Things are clicking. Also, Venus is sextiling Jupiter on Saturday. So again, just to kind of backtrack here, fuck Monday. Let's talk about Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday and Thursday again, we get kind of checked out. Kind of feel things out. On Wednesday, there's this kind of because we're engaged in something, we can actually think about something, things move forward. Thursday or Friday is kind of like, hey, wake up, time to check back in, get back in the program. And then Saturday, it's like, hey, I finally hear it. It's like that just goes away. And I don't know what you did. I don't know what happens, but something happens where it's like something gets cleared up in here where now things are making sense. And with Venus and Aries, right? Venus is still combust. So it's not like things are very recognizable. They're in their infancy stage. But Venus is in Aries being like, I'm having fun going after something. I'm having fun and I'm enjoying getting what I want and going after what's mine, right? And this is sextiling Jupiter and Aquarius. I've been kind of using this analogy with some of my clients, so some of you might know this, but the way I would look at this Venus and Aries sextiling Jupiter and Aquarius is like, when you're a little kid and you play the Easter egg hunt, like I was the baby in my family and in most situations, and it was like Easter egg hunts, man. I remember being young and there was sometimes just like, man, right when they say go, you just get like shoved to the ground and all the big kids go and get the eggs, right? And then when you turn into a big kid, you start shoving the little ones to the ground because you want to go get all the eggs, right? Venus and Aries is like, fuck those kids. Like, go get what's yours, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's every man for himself in almost one sense. But also, it's the two benefic planets. This is fun, right? Like, this is fun. This is competitive in a fun way. This is not bad vibes. This is not negativity. This is not spite. This is not anger. This is not revenge. This is fun. I think it's new and I think it's uncomfortable. And I think also too, we're not used to having this kind of freedom or ability with all like this. This is a lot of fire and air, right? There's all this freedom and all like, fire just just needs oxygen and a fuel source and it can really burn whatever. And it's like we're finally getting a oxygen. We've had a fuel source. We've had shit to burn for a long time. We're just finally getting oxygen to make that fire burn. I meant to. There's so many times I have meant to post the song, and I think I was gonna post it. I think on the new moon in Aries, or like when Mercury goes into Aries, I was gonna post "Let It Burn" by Usher, because God, that song, I fucking love that song. But this is one of those things. Just let it burn. Have fun with it, though. This is enjoyable. And I think this is really seeing the opportunity. Because again, you can be you can go Easter egg hunting, and as a kid, for me, like I didn't care what the other kids got. Like I was trying to get the Easter eggs for me. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's this Venus and Aries sextile Jupiter and Aquarius. It's like, of course, we all want all of the. If all of the kids could get all of the Easter eggs with like coins in it or all the good candy, then that would be great. But I gotta get what's mine. You know what I mean? I'm gonna not worry about what other people like. I've talked about this before, but a lot of the motivational quotes you see on like Instagram they're mostly bullshit. But the one I fucking love is the Michael Phelps one, where he's just like looking forward and the guy in second place is looking at him. That's just like, oh, that is such a sick picture. But this is kind of like that energy. Like, don't worry about what other people are doing. Like, do you. Like, what's that fucking saying? Like, don't worry about what I'm doing. Go chase a bag or something. Saturday looks like when it clicks, though. And this is also starting the new moon in Aries, which we get to Sunday. We end this week. And you're going to be here Sunday watching my video again. And on Sundays, this new moon in Aries, which again, like I said before, this is what I've been personally waiting for. Because this new moon is not only in Aries, right? So both of the luminaries, what the light is focused on is in Aries. What is Aries all about? Initiating, starting, engaging, going after things. It's also sextile, it's ruler, pretty much exactly. And so Mars is in Gemini. It's like, now that we've been kind of playing around and going here, going there, Mars and Gemini is doing this, doing that. This new moon in Aries is like, okay, now we have to go at this shit for real. Like, this new moon in Aries is like, you got a light warm up. Now it's time for the workout. You know what I mean? You did a 15-minute cardio. Now it's time to do some lifting. We're warmed up. The blood's flowing at this point. Now it's game time. Mars also, well, actually, let's talk about Venus square Pluto real quick, because I thought this was really interesting. Now, I don't talk too much about Pluto transits because, to be honest with you, unless it's like a planet on top or like opposite Pluto, sure, you can get a square to Pluto, but it's kind of fucking background noise, right? At this point, don't get me wrong, Pluto's going to come up really, really big at the end of this year, and this is why I'm bringing this up. Venus stations retrograde at 26 degrees Capricorn at the end of this year in December. I think it's December 12th. Put a pin in your calendar with this Venus retrograde. I cannot emphasize that enough. This Venus retrograde is a really big deal, especially for the Americans, because it's really crazy in the American chart. But anyway, what I thought was interesting is this new moon's happening, right? And Venus is squaring Pluto basically right where Venus is going to station retrograde later this year. So I think this is going to put in some subtle context, maybe add a layer to what's going to be going on at the end of the year. But I look at Venus and Aries squaring Pluto, and Venus and Aries is very trigger happy over the nervousness to do a job, right? I look at Venus and Aries as like cracking under pressure. Venus and Aries is like, I can do the best, don't worry about it. But it's only this reactionary because there's Pluto right there. So here's the thing with Venus square Pluto on Sunday. Don't react. Like, if you're playing poker and you've got a lot of money on the table and you get a card you don't want, are you going to make a bad face? Because then everyone's just going to read your face and go, oh, they don't got shit. They're bluffing. Let me pretty much take all of their money. This Venus and Aries square Pluto is very like, don't crack under the pressure, for one. Still fight your fight, but also know when to back down too. Because Venus and Aries squaring Pluto, there's only so much fight you can do. And I also look at this new moon in Aries sextiling Mars, and it's just like one thing. I know I'm going back and forth with the cameras here, but and I've talked about this over the past couple weeks, but I just can't emphasize enough how much the idea of going down the path of least resistance has truly helped me not have so much resistance in my life. But I look at Venus and Aries squaring, Pluto in Capricorn is like, if you're resisting it, listen to that. You know what I mean? Don't force anything. Like there's certain, like Venus and Aries is very like, gimme, gimme, gimme. But there's certain things where that's just like, no. You know what I mean? So there's this kind of like attitude, I think, with Venus square Pluto. But again, I only think it's going to be important for looking at Venus's retrograde at the end of the year. What I want to get to, though, is the new moon in Aries sextiling Mars. What are we starting? What are we beginning? We just got done with the cardio. The blood is flowing. We have stretched all of our ligaments. Let's do some lifting, right? What does Aries rule in your chart? What are you starting new again? With Mars and Gemini too, what are you curious about? What is grabbing your attention? With the North Node of Mars, what are you learning about? Like, what are you actively engaged in that's stimulating your brain? Not to mention, this is now next week. We're going to start talking about next week. Next week, Mars is going to trine Jupiter. So this is where, we really start, like, this is gains. Like, we're going to start lifting some heavy weight. Mars and Jupiter is like, again, this is where the productive energy is. These next 2 weeks, Mars trining Jupiter is like, squeeze that out. Don't waste any last drops. Next week, Venus enters Taurus. Hallelujah. About time Venus enters Taurus. I think once Venus enters Taurus, a lot more context comes to the game because Venus will conjoin Uranus and then square Saturn and la. But Venus will enter Taurus. That's going to be great. Think of how Venus and Pisces was. Venus and Pisces was fun. I personally like Venus and Aries just because all of the air and fire, but I know a lot of people, that was not a popular opinion, but whatever. But Venus and Taurus, I truly think people like that. I don't know if people are going to like Venus on top of Uranus. There was a year, I think it was 2019, I hated Venus on Uranus. Oh, it was awful. Mars trines Jupiter next week, though. So, I mean, we're really going after what we're going after. Like, I mean, it's the wind is coming in. The Santa Banana winds are hailing in, and the wind turbines are taking it, right? We're generating electricity. We're, as my dad would say, we're cooking with peanut oil. Next week, we also have the Mercury Cazimi, which, awesome for number one, mental clarity, very that's all good. But the Mercury Cazimi is happening at the same degree that Mars stationed retrograde in last year, at 28 Aries. I don't know what that means yet. I'm curious, though, as to what the connection is going to be to what the Mars retrograde meant for us last year versus what kind of gets solved or what problems kind of get, what solutions really get brought up now after the Mars retrograde. And then next week, too, Mercury's going to sextile Jupiter and Mars, which is even better. And by next week, too, I will be announcing much more of the Patreon and the podcast. I'll have more stuff for you guys. It's all kind of in the works right now still, too. So I just wanted to say that. So just make sure you keep on the lookout for that. That's what I've got for you guys. That's what this week really looks like. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you next week.